How do you know how far to go? Or when you've gone far enough?
People like you that think having a baby is like going shopping.
Science wasn't supposed to let us down.
I know I can give you a boy.
You betrayed me.
Sean Shackleton was 9 when his mother was murdered.
I remember my dad coming up to me and basically just telling me my mum had been killed. She was gone, beaten to death.
He's just seen where it happened. He now wants to know who did it.
Hello and welcome to Crimewatch, and we'll have more on that very emotional meeting in a few minutes as the son comes to terms with what really happened to his mother.
But we start with what happened to a pillar of the community in Edinburgh. As a financial centre, Edinburgh is booming, but somebody has been cooking the books, and no one knows more about it than Leslie Cumming.
There's no doubt Edinburgh is a very safe city to live in. We do benefit from a lot of tourism. It's a very affluent city. Unfortunately, my line of work does take me to the more unpleasant sides of Edinburgh.
Oh, you're a gem.
Tea's all made. Drink it before it gets cold. Your toast's ready.
Darling.
And I am off to bed again.
Oh, that's us, darling.
Okay, dear.
Mm.
See you tonight. Oh, listen, why were you running outside?
I wasn't.
I heard you in the path.
That wasn't me. It's most probably kids upstairs.
Well, somebody was running. Have a wee look, dear, will you? Just make sure.
I'm the Chief Accountant of the Law Society. My role is to supervise the inspection process which looks after client funds which are held by solicitors in Scotland. As Chief Accountant over the last 20 years, I've found myself having to deal with a number of solicitors who have stolen money or have been struck off for serious misdemeanours. That in itself has produced a huge amount of work for me, reviewing files to see if I can identify individuals who may have a grudge against me. Stepping out of the garage, having locked the car, to see that a stranger, dark clothes, balaclava, coming out of the gloom, walking straight at me, produced a sense of disbelief. I couldn't believe that something was going to happen. I didn't know what it was, but I realized I was the victim of his intentions, that he was going to attack me for some reason.
When I went to the door, Leslie was slumped on the seat, and I actually thought originally he had had a heart attack or something. But I said to him, "What's wrong, Leslie?" And he said, "Get an ambulance, I've been stabbed."
It just didn't make sense to me. There were no threats. There was no attempt to rob me. It was just a silent and professional assault.
I thought, this can't be happening. You know, it's not real. This is what happens on, you know, a television program. It's not what happens to you.
It was a matter of luck whether these blows were life-threatening or fatal or just superficial.
Now, one of our main lines of inquiry at the moment is to try and establish if that man was contracted to carry out this attack due to Mr. Cummings' nature of employment. This man did his best to cover himself up, but crucially, we have DNA evidence. There is a £10,000 reward available to anyone who can put a name to the DNA profile we have of this man.
I want to return to as near normality as I can, quite simply so that the individual who carried this out will know that I've not been permanently damaged by his attack.
Well, see what we can do. And Keith, as you say, is a £10,000 reward, which might loosen some tongues, and there's the DNA of the attacker. Yes. Of course, the attacker could be sort of rather low-life, put up to this by someone else, and that's your suspicion.
Absolutely. We have a partial profile of the person we believe attacked Mr. Cumming, and it's very important that we can use it to eliminate people, or indeed, more importantly, to implicate them in this attack.
OK, so if anybody knows who did it, easy to eliminate somebody who didn't do it. What about someone who had a grudge? I mean, obviously, his job, Leslie Cummings' job, is to look at Ben's solicitors. That's one area. Yeah. But maybe people know of another reason for someone having a grudge against him.
I would be very interested to speak to anybody who can give us any reason why somebody would bear a grudge against Mr. Cumming and may have a motive for carrying out this attack.
I mean, it was really pretty nasty injuries he sustained. Some of them, it must be said, were defence wounds as well, though, weren't they?
I believe so. I have no doubt it was an attempt, certainly, to disfigure Mr. Cummings, that's for sure. OK, well, as I say, this £10,000 reward. We've got the DNA. If you've got any idea who did this, just let us know. And if you've got any idea what the grudge was all about, let us know that too. Call us here in the studio, or call the Instant Room on 0131 620 5150. And you can also log into our website. That's at bbc.co.uk/crime.
And just 4 weeks later, and 40-odd miles along the M8, another Scots accountant was mysteriously confronted near his home. The difference is Andrew Ramsey hasn't been seen since. His partner, Beverly, who was with him as they strolled in the Cardonald district of Glasgow, says two men pretending to be policemen handcuffed him and took him away in a dark saloon car. So have you seen Andrew Ramsey any time in the last 2 months, or have you any idea where he may be? If you do, then do please give us a call here in the studio or the Instant Room on 0141 532 5415, or you can call Crime Stoppers anonymously on 0800 555 111, and there's a £5,000 reward.
Imagine losing your mum when you're still at primary school. You're too young really to take in much, but as you grow older, you find it harder and harder to come to terms with the fact that your mother was murdered. You are keen to find out more. Well, now, this is a case we covered 15 years ago. In fact, it was Crimewatch viewers who identified the victim. She was Cheryl Shackleton from Nelson in Lancashire. And there she is holding her son. But not very long after that picture was taken, Cheryl started to develop mental problems. She finished up leaving home, and for some reason, she ended up in London. Now police have reopened the case, and this is the moment last week when Cheryl's son, Sean, met the officer in charge and learned what really happened.
I was 8 or 9 years old. I remember my dad coming up to me and basically just telling me my mum had been killed. She was gone, beaten to death. I've always had an image in my mind where it could be and what it could be like, but I've never known. So actually identify the place and be here, it gives it, well, it gives it more clarity. Whether it can ease my mind and heart in any way, hopefully it can.
How you feeling?
Strange, but all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the part where it all happens.
Yeah.
So just what do you want to ask me?
I don't know anything about it, really.
I know from your dad that you actually know a little bit about your mum's mental health at the time,
yeah.
don't you?
Yeah,
I mean, what did you
my
understand her mental health to be like at the time?
Very erratic, like a movement, probably. Yeah. Yeah, not making much sense.
Well, we're actually not far away from where your mum's body was found. It was actually found at 5:30 in the morning on that Sunday. But how do you feel about going down there? Is it something you want to do?
I think it is, yeah.
Sure?
Yeah.
Okay, come on then,
Okay.
I'll take you down. Literally, just where we are now, just a few feet in front here, was where
Right.
Mum was found.
Right.
She was lying on the actual pathway here. Do you want to know what happened to her? You know what the...
I do, yeah, because I've never known.
Yeah.
And I think the most painful thing is she's gone.
Yeah.
So what happened to her, just it fills it in, doesn't it, the gap.
Yeah, okay then, but if, you know, what I'm telling you, if you want to stop, just say, okay?
Okay.
It was quite a severe beating, effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had quite severe facial injuries, and it was repetitive injury. There was quite a severe upward blow to your mum's chin, and she had a ruptured liver as well, which they say was actually done with some force. It was hemorrhaging and shock, coupled with the other injuries. And exposure to the cold. She had quite a large shoulder bag with her, and that has never been found. So clearly there's either been a robbery or a theft here. And also we can't discount fully that there may have been a sexual motive there as well, and somebody had attempted to strangle her as well. That was one of the other injuries that was found.
Right, well that's cleared up a few questions for me.
Anything else, mate, at the moment?
Not at the moment, no. I can't think about it at the moment.
You all right?
That's enough, yeah.
Yeah, sure?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Okay, mate, come on then.
I just hope it'll jog people's memory.
Well, let's see if we can do just that. But, I mean, first of all, we're going back to 1991. What was she doing in that part of London, in Brockley in southeast London? Have you any idea? She had no relatives there? As far as we know, no friends there.
Nick, it's a very good question, and one that I hope that we can have answered tonight, because she was in an area of London where she had no known links to or ties to.
And she must have been, she always took her suitcase with her because she was on the move so much. She wasn't a bag lady, far from it. I mean, she'd just been to Paris, and she was back in London for some reason we don't know. Her suitcase never been found, so she would have been going home somewhere that Saturday night, never turned up to reclaim her baggage.
We assume so. She was staying in hotels close to the time of her death, but she always took the suitcase with her with all her possessions in, and that has never been found.
Now, there were 3 witnesses in particular who rang Crimewatch in 1991, who you want to find again, 3 women, and tell us why you need them to call again.
We need them to call because when they rang in 1991, they gave vital information about a woman who, by description, we think was Cheryl. 2 of those sightings were in Endwell Road, which is near the park. One of them was from a woman who called herself Lucy. The third was a sighting of the woman we believe to be Cheryl with a man going into the park at midnight on the Saturday night. So clearly it's vital information, and we'd like them to ring in again.
And that man's best description you have?
The best description we have at the moment is that he was male, white, about 6 foot tall, 25 to 30 years old, and of an athletic build.
You mentioned that there might have been a sexual motive. Indeed, I think part of her body had been displayed, or at least the clothing had been partly removed. It looks as though things had been stolen. Extreme violence was used. And that's an unusual combination of, if all happened together, really did. The theft, the violence, and the sex motive. And I just wonder if police officers, prison officers, have encountered somebody in the 15 years since. I think that's a possible for this.
Well, clearly the combination of the 3 is a lethal combination. And I believe that in the 15 years since it happened, the killer has actually spoken to somebody or boasted to somebody about this murder. And clearly, anybody that has any information with regards to it, we would like them to call in and let us know what that is.
That man now, from the description, would be in his 40s now, probably,
He would be, yes, by now.
OK, well, if you've got any suspicions, if you knew what was happening, or heard anything about this happening at the time, this is a picture of Cheryl's passport, incidentally. Do give us a call, please. Or if you remember seeing her, particularly if you was one of those 3 people who called us in 1991 who saw Cheryl at or near Telegraph Hill Park in southeast London. It was a pretty cold night back there if you were out there. You might well remember it. Call us here or call the incident room on 020 7230 9084.
Later on Crimewatch, the rapist who's acting out his disturbing fantasies for real.
Tell me you love your daddy. Do you love your daddy, yeah? Do you love your daddy, yeah?
Well, we've got to find that man, but first let's look at some people who have been found, and yet again we've had some outstandingly good results to report this month. We often take on the most difficult cases on Crimewatch. Even so, about a third of all of them get solved, and about half as a direct result of calls from viewers. For example, 3 weeks ago we showed you 6 men suspected of involvement in the sexual abuse of a 13-year-old, a girl in North Wales. As a direct result of Crimewatch viewers calling in, 4 men have now been charged, and incidentally, the day after the programme went out, Fred Lawler, who was already in custody in relation to these offences, was given a life sentence. But we're still looking for these two. Take a closer look, the two of them, please, and if you know either of them, call us now.
Last month we showed CCTV of a stabbing at Euston Station. 2 men recognised themselves, came forward that night. They were both arrested and have been bailed. A further man's been interviewed by police after being identified on our website.
4 years ago, we showed a series of arson attacks on lorry depots right across Northumbria, causing something like £18 million worth of damage in all. 3 weeks ago, a Newcastle man was charged and he goes on trial later this year.
In that same programme, 4 years ago, we featured rapes that happened in the 80s in South Yorkshire. 49-year-old James Lloyd has now been charged with 3 offences of rape. He'll be tried in July.
Dominic Mylat was wanted about 6 years ago in connection with a terrible assault and rape of a woman in North London. Last year, German police arrested him and got him extradited back to Britain. He has now been convicted of rape and GBH. He's been given 2 life sentences.
In October, we showed you CCTV of 2 men robbing a betting shop in Sheffield city centre. A viewer called police and brothers Leslie and Alsant Bryan were arrested. They were convicted and sentenced to a total of 13 years in prison.
Last July, we showed you this man, Charles Clegg. He was wanted for dealing in Class A drugs. A Crimewatch viewer not only remembered him, but saw him 6 months later and called the police. Clegg has now been given 3 years in jail.
Finally, 12 years ago, we told you about the murder of Shirley Leach. Her body was discovered in toilets in Bury bus station. She'd been sexually assaulted and strangled. 2 weeks ago, a 37-year-old man from Bury was arrested and charged.
3 weeks ago, we told the disturbing story of an innocent man who was targeted, wrongly targeted, as a paedophile because of local rumours that were completely untrue. Now, he was very, very courageous, in fact, brave enough to appeal on camera to try and find his attackers. Sadly, in another rather similar case, the victim can't do a Crimewatch appeal. He was equally innocent, but he didn't survive the attack. His name was Norman Moffat. It happened 5 years ago, and again, the key to what happened lies in the community.
It was hard for me to have to watch a good man suffer what he had to suffer.
You really ask the question is, how did this happen? And why did it happen?
This is Coleraine with a population of just over 20,000 people. And I reckon I need to speak to about 12 of those people who can assist me in this case. Here we have people who set themselves up as judge, jury and executioner. And if that's not bad enough, the person at the receiving end of this was a totally innocent man.
Mom! Mom! I need your help here, Mom!
What's wrong? Oh, what's happened to him now? Oh, you're as white as a sheet. Have you fallen?
No, but it hurt.
Oh, come in. Take a chin. Oh, keep pressure on it. Oh, please.
Don't worry, I'll be fine.
You'll be all right.
I'll be fine.
The truth is that Norman Moffat was far from fine. In fact, he spent the next few weeks in hospital unconscious, where he eventually died. This was just an ordinary man out to collect his morning paper.
My father was a very quiet, private family man who lived and worked in the town of Coleraine all his life. In his younger days, he was a very keen footballer. And then later in life, he developed a love for racing pigeons, which he kept up until the time of his death.
He loved racing his pigeons on a Saturday afternoon. and waiting for them to come back home again. And if they didn't come back home, he wasn't too pleased.
I've been able to piece together what happened early that morning 5 years ago. It's my opinion that this was a horrendous mistake.
Morning, Norman. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you very much. See you later. Thanks.
This man hadn't bumped into Norman Moffat. He had in fact stabbed him and just yards away from his home. But this security camera here captured the killing on tape. As I speak, new technology is being used to clarify the original blurry image. But while this is going on, I need to trace some people. There's this man with the rucksack. Who or what did he see? This man on a bike and the driver of this lorry. Also 2 men standing at the phone box near at hand. All of these people could have come face to face with the killer of Norman Moffat without even realising it.
Mom! Mom! I need your help here, Mom!
These 2 men had good reason to be arguing. The man that they were after was not Norman Moffat, but a local paedophile who lived in the area at that time. Like Norman, he would have been out early in the morning, and he was indeed of similar appearance to Norman. The fact is that the killer got the wrong man.
That night, before he died, I said to the nurse, "Nurse, I can't take any more." And I went home. But I didn't sleep. But I just couldn't see him. Just couldn't watch him pass away. Tired. I just said my goodbyes to him. Said we'd meet again.
We've got people within the community here who were outraged about a paedophile they thought was getting away with it. I need those same people to feel outraged enough to come forward and assist me with this case in relation to the murder of a totally innocent man.
Nigel, as you implied there, there's some rank hypocrisy here, isn't there? There are some people who said they needed to see justice done and were prepared to take it into their own hands. They're not very helpful with justice now. Now they got it wrong.
That's correct. Thankfully, Nick, there are some people who have come forward and have been helpful to us, even in the past couple of weeks. And we have done all that we can with the information that we have received thus far. But there's still crucial information out there, and that comes from the people that you have referred to, the people that are close to whoever perpetrated this awful crime.
Now, I know from conversation we had, you're never going to let this one drop. This murder caused huge concern, and still does 5 years later in Coleraine. It's one you've actually, really got to resolve. The witnesses, we saw some of them there. There's one I know that you want to trace that we didn't see on CCTV, but there's a woman walking past when those 2 guys were having the argument, and you never traced her.
That's correct. I would put this woman, she was walking up Circular Road towards the railway road, and she was on the left-hand side of the road, and she was wearing clothing that was particularly easily identified. She was wearing a speckled coloured woolen hat which was brown and white in colour, a 3/4 length duffel type coat, and she had long brown hair and wearing black trousers.
Now, just supposing after this 5 years, I live in Corray and I've got a pretty good idea who did it, or at least some theories. I might be a bit worried about ringing you after 5 years, because you're going to say, well, why on earth didn't you ring me back then? I mean, how are people going to be treated if they do call us tonight?
We're not interested in why people haven't rung thus far. What we are interested in is getting the information that's crucial to this investigation and being able to make amenable the person who perpetrated this awful crime. I can assure people that we will be sympathetic to them, that they will be treated professionally if they come forward and give us the information. I don't want people to assume that someone else will ring as well. If they have information, no matter how small it is, I want them to come forward and tell me about it.
Well, please do. Call us here at the studio. The number's always on the screen, or you can call the incident room. That's on 028 7028 0980. Now, Detective Constable Rav Wilding wants you to put some names to 5 villains, all of them caught on camera.
And they are all tall guys. All 5 of them look to be around 6 foot or more, so you can't miss them. This lad tries a knife-point hold-up at a Ladbrokes in North London, but he's spooked when told he's on camera. What does he do? He runs straight for another camera. And he really gets up close and personal with this one. Who is he? Watch this very tall bloke. We reckon he's 6'2", in a Jeweller's in Harpenden. He's a one-man rep company of thoughtful customer impressions. He does the hand on hip, the arms fold, the head scratch, the forward lean, the thinking buyer's chin stroke. Then he spoils the whole act by taking a ring and making a quick exit. Let's get him back in. Check out the sideburns and check in with a name. This fella belongs to the Trust Me I'm a Guy in Shorts school of thieving. Him and a mate want to get their hands on a £3 grand oyster dish in an antique shop in Wallingford, Oxfordshire. They and ah, then they lift it, bag it and leg it. But they did leave these 2 mugshots to remember them by. If you know the men with the dish, dish the dirt. This guy may be another 6-footer, but he's also the lowest of the low. He cons and bullies cash out of old people. Here, he walks through a victim's gate in Fareham. Another camera picks him up in another house. But to pick him up for real, we need his name. There you have it, 5 tall fellas who know how to stoop low. If you've got the lowdown on any of them, give us a call. Or you can text us. Just text CW, followed by your message to 83199.
In our next case, we want to home in on a rapist who's living out his sexual fantasies. They were horrifyingly real for the woman he attacked as she made her way home near London's Brick Lane last autumn.
Thank you so much. Thank you for not killing my babies. Thank you so much.
Very normal husband party, normal Saturday night. A lot of people there, a lot of people I hadn't seen for a while. It was just a really nice, sort of fun evening with a load of my friends.
Should we think about making a move?
Yeah, it's getting late, I think. Yeah, let's get going.
Probably at about 3 o'clock, decided that we were all going to, the 3 friends that I'd gone to party with, were going to leave and get a cab back.
You all right, mate?
Hi there, can we go to Brick Lane, please? Sorry. I'll just take a joke. And she's like, oh yeah, and then she went...
Where I live, I couldn't actually get the taxi to drop me off right outside my door because it's a kind of pedestrianised estate.
Sure you don't want me to walk you to the door?
No, I'm fine, darling.
Take care.
Night, guys.
I actually saw no one, so I felt safe enough just to make the short walk back. Just a very, very normal sort of Saturday night, really, returning home. I think I heard him before I saw him.
Hey, love, you have a good night, yeah?
Yes, thanks.
You've been out with your friends, yeah?
Yeah.
He was just making slightly flirtatious conversation, asked me if I'd had a good night out, and I was just, you know, all I cared about was just getting into my house, and I kind of probably talked back a bit and just said yes, I'd had a nice night, and just was basically just getting my keys out, ready to go into my house.
You're very pretty. Can I give you a kiss?
No.
Can I give you a kiss?
No.
Oh, go on, let me give you a kiss. Can I use your loo then? Yeah?
No.
Go on, let me use your loo.
OK, use it.
I made a decision that I kind of didn't want to be stuck outside with this guy getting angry because I figured he was going to attack me on my doorstep. So when he said, oh, can I just use your loo, I just thought, OK, well, I'll let him in. I'll just, you know, I'll wait by the door and hopefully he'll just leave, or he just won't get kind of aggravated and angry. I checked for the door and realised that the double lock was on, which meant that none of my housemates were in. We lived with 3 other people. As soon as my door was open and he pushed me in, I knew that he obviously was going to probably attempt to rape me.
No!
No, I'm going to kiss you. I'm going to kiss you. I'm going to rape you.
Please! I'm pregnant with twins! Please don't kill my babies! Please don't kill my babies!
I tried to play to his kind of conscience, and I actually made up the story that I was pregnant. He looked a bit kind of stunned, and then said, OK, well, he basically persuaded that I was, you know, if I performed oral sex on him, then he wouldn't rape me.
I've got a knife here. Do it properly, or I'll rape you and I'll stab you.
At every stage of the attack, I knew that if I played it slightly wrong or angered him, that he was going to fully rape me, or that he was even going to kill me.
Tell me you love your daddy. Do you love your daddy, yeah? Do you love your daddy, yeah?
He kept referring to him as my daddy, and I guess I just did exactly what he wanted, so that the ordeal would be over as soon as possible.
You got any money?
No. I promise I don't have anything. Please, I don't have anything.
There was nothing really for him to take apart from my phone.
I won't call the police. I promise I won't call the police. Thank you so much. Thank you for not killing my babies. Thank you so much.
Of course I wasn't thankful, but I wanted him to think that I was, and that he'd got away with it so much so that he could leave and he wouldn't have to panic about anything, and he could just walk out of my house convinced he got away with it. As soon as that door was shut, I sort of paused a bit, and then that was it. This guy was going to be caught, and I just picked up the phone and dialed the police straight away.
You've been out with your friends, yeah?
Yeah.
If you look at the amount of risk that this offender has exposed himself to during the commission of the offence, it's very, very high. He attacks a female in her own home without knowing who may be inside already, who may be returning, who may be asleep upstairs. And it's as though the offender feels in some way invincible, that no matter what happens during that offence, he will be all right, he will be able to get away. He's obviously got a very rigid idea of, sort of a scripted idea of how this scenario plays out in his head. And he's very forceful in terms of getting the victim to do exactly what he wants her to do.
Tell me you love your daddy. Do you love your daddy, yeah?
His reference to wanting the victim to call him her daddy. It's a very unusual piece of verbal behaviour, and it's something that's likely to have been heard by a number of other women. And so if there are people out there who are thinking that they may have been approached by this man, some of the hallmarks of this offence may be there, even if the offender didn't try and pursue it to the point of a sexual attack.
The scary thing is that I feel that he was so confident and calm the whole way through, except when he would get really angry and violent, that I believe that he probably has certainly done this before and could well do it again.
Well, the good news is we have a really good e-fit of the rapist. He's clean-shaven, Asian, with short, wavy hair, maybe 23, 24, getting towards 6 foot and stocky. And D.I. Ian Corner, what about what he was wearing? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the night Fiona, he was wearing a grey hooded top, a white T-shirt and some black or grey baggy jeans.
Now, we heard in the reconstruction there from the psychological profiler there, the way he says, "Daddy, call me Daddy." I mean, that's a real trademark, yes. Which he's very likely to have used before with other women. And also this business that he had another trademark saying "yeah" at the end of his sentences.
Yeah, it's the, we were looking for people who may have been in a relationship with a boyfriend who's used this type of sexual behaviour, the daddy word, and punctuating his sentences with "yeah." Hopefully that will trigger some ideas for people.
And quite often people like this can be loners, they're oddballs, misfits, but he's very sociable, very confident. He doesn't fit that picture at all.
He's a very confident man. Sure. He was confident enough to approach the victim in the street, very sociable. There's every possibility he's been in a relationship or is still in a relationship. This is a very confident, pushy man. He's not a loner by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, we need you to put all those things together, and please have DNA, so if you've any suspicions that anyone you know could be the rapist, call. The police will know very quickly if they've got the right man. Call us here in the studio or call the incident room on 0208 217 3948. And if you've been a victim of crime, you can call victim support on 0845 30 30 900.
Last September, a couple in Middlesex forgot to lock their back door at their home in Edgware before they went to bed. 3 men got in, and in the course of a burglary, used such violence they came close to killing Diane McCune and Jim Willis. And you were injured so badly, you, I gather, remember virtually nothing about it.
No, I've had a few flashbacks, but nothing major.
You've just come back from holiday. I've actually got some pictures of you when you were going on holiday, looking absolutely, fit as a fiddle. Mm-hmm. And then a couple of days later, you looked, well, like this. How badly were you hurt, actually?
I ended up with a fractured skull, double broken jaw, broken eye sockets, and deep lacerations to the head, which needed staples.
It just seems they were trying to kill you guys. You were in a different room, weren't you?
Yeah, I was in the bathroom at the beginning, in the bedroom as well, but it started in the bathroom for me.
They stole a certain amount of money, but that's it, just some savings. It's not as though you had a Gainsborough hanging on the wall, and it was just an ordinary house.
It's ordinary.
Casey, have you any idea why such extraordinary violence was used in the course of an ordinary burglary?
We don't, unfortunately. We don't know why this has happened to, Jim and Diana, normal, law-abiding citizens. We don't know a great deal about why it happened or who these people are.
I mean, the injuries that Diane suffered were absolutely appalling, just like Jim. It's just incredible that anybody would do this.
Yeah.
What sort of descriptions have you got of the guys?
We've got 3 guys, all white, aged between 20 and 30, dirty looking, wearing dark hooded clothing. But that's all we've got at this point.
Was the violence spontaneous, or had they come with weapons, do you know?
That actually, from what we can make out, there wasn't anything left behind or anything missing of Jim and Diane, so we believe that the weapons were brought to the house, used and taken with them.
So they will have gone home that night in September. Mm-hmm. It must have been somewhere near Edgware, Middlesex. Mm-hmm. They'd have been, what, covered in blood?
They would have been, yes.
Because, I mean, the violence, they really would have been covered in blood. And presumably they'd have been talking about it. They'd have had a certain amount of money. Mm-hmm. I mean, their family, their friends, people know about this.
Somebody out there must know something. It's a very busy residential road and area, so somebody must have seen something.
And I know you're really frightened that other people are going to have this happen to them until these guys are caught.
Yeah, someone that may not be as lucky as we were to recover from it.
I wouldn't say what you went through was luck, except appalling luck. Please, don't let it happen to somebody else. Call us here in the studio, or call the incident room, 020 8733 4595.
Now, Detective Sergeant Jane Corrigan and Detective Inspector Paul Roach take us through a robbery in a Liverpool hospital in February. Some of the gang were togged up in balaclavas, but we hope you can tell us about one man who wasn't.
We've got a fella here who doesn't seem to be in hospital for the good of his health. Take a good look at him. We think he may have some questions to answer about an armed robbery that's about to take place.
Yeah, he's not involved in any of the violence himself, but we suspect he's pulling the strings for an armed gang who are hiding quite close by.
And this is February this year?
Yeah, it's 16th of February this year, and this male enters the hospital through the foyer and quickly positions himself next to the ATM, which is the cash machine.
And this ATM is just about to be loaded up with a 6-figure sum. And we can see, look at this chap, he even gets up and speaks to one of the security staff. And then he appears to be quite busy on his mobile.
Yeah, he's constantly on his mobile phone, and we suspect he's alerting the other members of the gang who are hiding when the machine's been fully stocked with money, and also when the door to the bunker is been left open.
That's like his job done now.
Yeah, once he's finished, he calmly puts his beanie hat on and you see him walking out of the shot.
And we can see him walk out here, and that's the green light. In goes the security staff, and here come these two guys with crowbars.
Yeah, you can see in this shot that this particular guy gets a crowbar across his head. And we have to remember that this gang have, in the last few minutes, held a woman registrar hostage within the hospital as well.
If we take another look at it, not only are these two guys in yellow jackets, there's a third man involved, and we can see him. He's first into the bunker. There he goes.
Yeah, in a few seconds' time, you see this male down here. He's a lot younger than the others. He's got very distinctive shiny brown hair.
And here it is, just coming up on our screen here. And this is one of the crowbars that was used in this vicious attack.
Yes, it is, yeah, and they say this gang get away with a substantial amount of money.
Now, we don't know much about these, but this other guy, we believe he's the main player, and we think it would be in his benefit to call us tonight.
Yes, we do, yeah.
He may be entirely innocent.
He may be, but he's been in the hospital at the relevant times when this offence has happened, and he may have some information for us.
Well, if you're this fella, or you know who he is, call us here in the studio, 0500 600 600.
Hallam Tennyson's last day was a pretty good snapshot of his appetite for life. Tragically for the 85-year-old, it had a very ugly end. He was the great-grandson of one of Britain's most famous poets, Alfred Lord Tennyson. But he was renowned in his own right as a brilliant radio producer, a man who believed nothing mattered more in life than people.
I think when we get shut in ourselves and can't make any kind of deep contact with other people, that is when we become sterile and dead.
In his 85 years, Beryl Hallam Augustine Tennyson travelled the world, lived with Gandhi, wrote books and plays, learnt 6 languages, and even umpired at Wimbledon. And he still wasn't ready to call it a day.
Happy birthday to you.
My father was an incredibly energetic, exuberant, animated human being. Even though he was 85, he really behaved as if he was a lively 30-year-old.
To be 100.
My memories of him when I was very young, sort of when I was 5, 6, 7, that kind of age, was that he was just enormously playful and very loving. He was extremely gentle and very thoughtful and very kind. He was a very loving father, and he was a very, very loving grandfather.
Hallam spent 3 decades as a much-admired radio producer. But his biggest challenge was more personal.
When my father first came out, I really thought that he was going to make a life that was appropriate for him. I think what became more difficult was as that progressed and he became more publicly gay, and he clearly took enormous risks in his personal life and personal relationships. I know that he visited gay bars, I know that he got involved in very seedy encounters, and of course in a way it was very hard to reconcile because he was such a loving man and remained a very loving man. I don't know quite what it was that drove him to that kind of behaviour. And in a way, once he'd gone public, there was nothing holding him back from just going to those extremes, which of course ultimately led to his death, which is tragic.
Hallam lived in this flat in Highgate, North London. While his dramatic life had become an open book, his violent death remains a mystery. On the Wednesday before Christmas, he left the flat for his regular game of tennis.
I thought you were on cracking form last week.
Well, I was.
Fairly unaccustomed, if I may say.
No, I've been playing really well the last few weeks.
Yeah.
After some early afternoon Christmas shopping in town, he took the tube back to Islington. By 4:30, he was in one of his favourite haunts on the city road.
All right, mate? Hello, mate. It's Tennyson, isn't it?
Yes.
So, thanks. Thank you.
At around 11:15, Hallam's flatmate got back.
Ambulance. Shepherd's Hill, Highgate.
Hallam had been stabbed repeatedly in the neck and beaten around the head.
Of course, I have sleepless nights thinking about the moment of death and what must have happened in those few minutes or hours, hopefully only minutes, before he was actually killed, because the attack was incredibly brutal and the description from the police is unthinkable, really. I think what would help us now to come to terms with his awful death would be if something was resolved, we found out how it had happened, what had happened, and particularly who'd done it.
Well, DCI Tony Nash, let's try and find that out tonight. Let's just remind ourselves of the fact. It's the Wednesday before Christmas, and the last time Hallam was seen, as we saw in the reconstruction there, was Angel Tube Station in Islington. He could have been killed at his flat any time between, 5 in the afternoon and 11 at night, and there was no sign of forced entry at his flat, so he must have let his killer in.
That's right, Fiona. We know he was at the Angel at 4:30. It's likely that the murder happened before 11 o'clock, so that is the time gap that we've got. What we're looking for tonight is anyone that would have seen Mr. Tennyson at the cinema, anyone that would have seen him leaving the cinema, particularly if he was with somebody else. Was he seen in the Islington area after 4:30? And very important for us is how did he get from Islington to Highgate? We know he didn't use public transport. Was he using a taxi or was he with somebody that had a car? And they're all critical to this investigation.
And then, of course, did anyone see him going into his flat in Highgate with somebody?
That's
or was
right.
there anyone hanging around there? I mean, he was a very distinctive looking character, wasn't he, Hallam? I mean, we can see him on CCTV there, the Angel. He was 85, he had his beard, he had his glasses, his baseball cap. People would recognise him. I mean, and also he had, as we can see in the CCTV, he had a multicoloured jacket. In fact, he had a few like this.
That's right.
You know, so he cut a very distinctive figure, and he was well known in the gay community. And those are the people you want to talk to tonight, aren't there? People who, from the gay community, maybe from the bisexual community, who can help piece together his last hours. I mean, what can you say to encourage people like that to come forward and talk to the police?
What we're looking for, basically, are people that have known Mr. Tennyson. Mr. Tennyson had friends which were long-standing. He had friends that sometimes were fleeting acquaintances. All of those people may hold critical information which may help us catch the person responsible for this terrible murder. And I would urge them to come forward and actually speak to us. Anything that is said, we will treat it very sensitively.
I mean, that's key, isn't it? Because these people may well lead kind of double lives. They aren't necessarily going to want to talk to the police.
That's right. We're prepared to listen to what people say. If they're not prepared to give us their details, they still may have information that can help us lead on. Obviously, we do want to get their details because they may be evidentially witnesses. And it's very critical that actually phone us and give us the information in the first place.
And finally, one other final thing, there was a car seen in a private car park at the flats, but didn't belong to anyone in the flats. What was it, a dark saloon car? And you want to identify the driver of that?
Yeah, one of the occupants of the flat saw a saloon car in the back of the block of flats. It's quite an unusual place to park because from the road you can't see it. The interesting fact about it is that we can't attribute it to anyone that was in the building at the time. So it's key for us to identify whose car that was and what was it doing there. Well, if that was your car or you know anything to piece together what happened to Hallam Tennyson, call us here in the studio or call the incident room on 020 8358 0300. You can call Crime Stoppers anonymously if you want on 0800 555 111.
Nora Tate from Doncaster was in her 60s and she loved her fish and chips, but she never got to finish her meal when she sat down to eat it in her dining room last October. Somehow, someone was in her house and bludgeoned her to death. Her daughter, Jane, has been living with the consequences of that for the last 6 months. Just tell us a bit about your mum.
My mum was a typical pensioner. She had a good, quiet life that revolved around her grandchildren and her children. And on that day, she'd been for an appointment at the hospital. come home to have a fish and chip lunch.
It was just a routine trip to the hospital. She was actually very, very good health. Yeah?
Very good
And she'd
health,
lived in that street for 20 years? Knew
Yeah,
everybody,
she'd lived there a
everybody knew
long
her?
time, yeah, and knew a lot of people around the area.
Would she have let somebody into her house if she hadn't known them?
No, no, she'd lived on her own for a long time, and she was very cautious, very friendly, but really cautious.
Ray Turnbull, what is particularly disturbing about this case is the huge level of violence that was used.
Yes,
She was
it was.
really bashed around the back of the head to steal a purse.
Yeah. A brutal attack, and the violence used, you just can't understand why. The purse was actually taken, that hasn't been found. The weapon that was used hasn't been found. So we need a lot of information to come in to help us on.
And how are people going to be able to help on this?
Well, we've got an e-fit of a lad who was known in the area as a knockoff lad. And he was known for that reason because he was selling items. I believe he'd actually stolen these items, and I've appealed for this person to come forward. He may or may not be involved. If he's in fear of coming forward because he's a shoplifter, then my interest is in this murder, not for the fact he's been out actually...
You just want to
stealing
eliminate him, in other words?
Exactly, yes.
How else can people help on this? I mean, people around Doncaster must be pretty concerned that this guy's on the loose.
Yes.
But you haven't got a description, you've got nothing else to go on. If it isn't Knockoff Lad, and you've no reason to suppose it is, you've got to eliminate that guy. What have you got to go on?
Well, 6 months on, I'm fairly confident that this person who killed Nora Tate may well have passed comment to somebody about what he has done. And I would ask those people who know who's done this to come forward, think about the family, have a conscience, and make that phone call.
Well, Jane, we'll do our best. Let's see what we can do. And incidentally, there's a £20,000 reward that's been put up in this case. So if you're not going to call just because of your conscience, please do that. But at least call in because of the £20,000. If you can help, if you can tell us anything, you can ring us here in the studio. You can call the incident room. That's on 01302 385 772. Now, the papers have been full of promises to clamp down on violent people who get back into the community. But as Jane and Rav go through some wanted faces now, you'll see that the authorities have really got their work cut out.
Dwayne St Michael Israel is from south-east London, originally from Jamaica. He's wanted for supplying crack cocaine. Now, he has extensive scars on his torso. Don't approach him, he's dangerous.
52-year-old Terence Thompson from Wolverhampton failed to appear at court on charges of assault and threats to kill his wife. He's a chef and may still be in the catering trade. As well as the Midlands, he has links in London.
And Colin Gordon was also due to stand trial on 7 counts of rape and a serious sexual assault on an 11-year-old girl. He's been missing since last July. He's 36 and 6'2". He has family in Chingford and links in Milton Keynes.
This Bonnie and Clyde couple are wanted for dealing heroin and crack cocaine around Redcar and Cleveland. Amanda Guy and James Campbell were due in court 4 years ago. James has a cartoon tattoo on his left arm saying "smoke it." He also has severe scarring on his chest. Amanda has several homemade tattoos on her arms and a butterfly on her right shoulder blade. The pair may be in Ireland.
And it's worth saying that we've now had several calls on the 2 men we showed you earlier, wanted in connection with the sexual abuse of a young girl in North Wales. Please, keep those calls coming in.
If you know anything about any of tonight's wanted faces, call us here, 0500 600 600.
Graham and Mikiko Gissing share a love of Oriental art and have collected valuable pieces all their lives. Graham, now 82, suffers from Parkinson's disease. It's a condition that's got much worse since January, when a burglar with a shotgun broke into their home. But the burglar found Graham's wife, an altogether different proposition.
We met 41 years ago in Japan. So we've been together 37 years. It was a Sunday. As usual, we went to see our son's family, came home. We lock up the doors, windows and all that to be safe, and then went into our family room to watch TV. All of a sudden this voice shouting, "Don't move," and then we looked up. First time we saw was this figure pointing gun at us. He tied Graham up very quickly, and as soon as he'd done it, he demanded that I should get up. He hit me with the butt of a gun, and he demanded to know, where's your jewelry? Where's your safe? He said, do what you're told to do, otherwise you get killed. We went into the next room, and he tied me up straight away, face down, and then my hands on my back. I don't want to give in, to tell him where he was, because I didn't want to give in against such a callous act. And then all of a sudden I felt my fingers being touched, and then it's like a soaring, gradually getting deep and deep, and the pains getting greater and greater. Then he started to shout very, very loud in order for my husband to hear what he's saying. He is saying, I am cutting your wife's finger. I cut her finger one by one. Had I been on my own, most probably I might have just let him do, rather than give in.
One extraordinary woman, I think you'll agree. Now, things to look for. Where did the burglar get the ladder he used to get in? Both it and the rope he left are being tested for forensics. He's mid-30s, Surrey accent, we think. The only really distinctive thing about him were his trainers, which had 2 silver stripes across the toe that had been blacked out. You can see some of the jewellery taken, earrings, pendant, and take a look at this diamond-encrusted giraffe on the lapel. And on top of that, stolen items included gold talisman used on samurai swords, gold and silver zodiac signs, 2 small Buddha statues, and a selection of precious coins. There's a sizable reward for information leading to a conviction, £25,000. So call us here in the studio, or call the incident room on 0845 125 2222.
Well, after a steady start, the calls have been flying in. We've had several names being suggested for the Brick Lane rapist, and one caller has asked to see that e-fit again, so we'll see if we can do that for you. Now, remember, the description was a mid-20s male, about 6 foot tall, stocky, and he had distinctive words, saying yeah at the end of every sentence, and asked, call me daddy. Very strange behaviour on that sickening male. Now, we've also had some good calls on Leslie Cummings' attack. We've had a name put forward for him, for that attacker, which is looking good. And the Edgware attempted murder, the 3 attackers that attacked those poor couple in their home and nearly killed them, we've had 3 names now put forward for those, so that is looking very good. As ever, the lines are still open, and you can help with any of our cases, please do give us a bell.
Sounds good, and details on tonight's other cases are on our website, bbc.co.uk/crime. Our phone lines are open until midnight tonight, and from 7:30 until midnight tomorrow. We're back after the news with Crimewatch Update at 10:35, later in some parts, so join us if you can.
Crimewatch next time is on Tuesday, May the 23rd, but don't forget, Update, do join us later tonight. Whatever happens, don't have nightmares. Sleep well. For now, for both of us. Good night.
Good night.